Okay, we'll call this committee of the whole budget meeting to order, and March the 5th. And I would like to mention that Councillor Harding is attending virtually due to medical reasons. So Councillor Harding will vote verbally for each motion. Okay, so roll call, that would mean that every councillor is present, so we can record that for our minutes. So the and you are there, Tim? No? Okay. We're planning on having him join us? Okay. We just haven't got him here yet. Okay. So I think we're going to move ahead with approve of the agenda, and then once Tim joins us, then if that's okay. So did you? Okay, thank you. All right, we do have an agenda in front of you, Council. Is there any additions anyone would like to make to the agenda? No? Okay, would somebody like to move the approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Lutz, second by Councillor Allen. All those in favor or against, please vote. Okay, motion carried. And I presume Haley, Tim will let us know as soon as he's arrived. Okay. All right, at this time I would ask, is there any counselor who wishes to declare a conflict of interest on any of the related proposed budget items? No? Okay, then we will move on to financial services, and we have our some guys like to have that almost sounds as bad as when We're good to go? Okay. And is Tim here yet? No. Okay. We'll keep moving on then. So, as I was saying, number 4, financial services, and we have our director, Greg Barr, will be presenting, and Director Barr.
Great. Committee of the Whole. So today we'll be taking you through the proposed 2025-26 capital and project budget. There's a number of project sheets that we'll be going through in detail. Before I kind of get started into it, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the hard work that goes into all of this. It really starts in the fall. Our financial analyst, Kevin Wheaton, kind of puts together, working with all the different departments, all the details of the components of all of the project sheets. That carries on getting refined, whatnot, from just about everybody in the building. And then we jump in later on to talk about funding sources and compile the project sheets, that kind of stuff. So it takes several months, and I just wanted to thank them for all their hard work. So the agenda for today is really going to just give you like an overview of the capital budget, just kind of some narrative associated with it. As well, talk about some municipal challenges, some of the information that I had in the introductory of the document that you would have already seen. And then we're going to walk you through all 45 project sheets. There's 10 that relate to municipal infrastructure, 8 that relate to municipal sewer, 3 that relate to Greenwood Water Utility, 6 with the regional sewer, and then 18 special projects. And then we'll talk a little bit and kind of summarize everything up in terms of what that means financially and the implications of it. So that's kind of the agenda for today. So I'll start off with the budget overview side of things. So obviously, when you look at this kind of a budget, it's centered around an increased investment in our critical infrastructure, really for the ongoing delivery of our municipal services, with particularly this year and in past years for the last little bit, a strong focus on the replacement of critical end-of-life assets. Also, the projects that you'll see in there's a lot of, especially when you get into the special projects, the key strategic priority projects relate to key strategic priorities of the municipality, so they kind of tie to that. So like I mentioned before, there's 45 projects that really relate to a lot of different things, such as sewer infrastructure and equipment, municipal and recreation facilities, roads, sidewalks, vehicles, IT improvements, and infrastructure improvements related to the Greenwood Water Utility. It amounts to over $48 million in 25-26 and almost $86 million over the next 5 years. Most of the project sheets that you'll see in here are really ongoing programs. Every year they would have different components to them. I'm going to talk about what each of the components are in the current year, but they're really project sheets that have been there for many years, just have different elements to it, and you'll kind of see how that works here in a little bit. There also are some carryover projects that have either had like a scope change, or there's been factors that have resulted in them being delayed to the subsequent year. So before I get into the details of the project sheets, just want to talk a little bit about challenges that are faced by the municipality. So obviously we have increasing demands for municipal infrastructure, particularly new development, ongoing maintenance, and capital refresh. Capital refresh being a huge item. In terms of a lot of the assets, particularly sewer assets and water and things of that nature, reaching into life and require that refresh. As the municipality grows, obviously the need for critical infrastructure grows as well. But a lot of this comes at a time when obviously a lot of municipalities, ours included, across the province really face significant financial challenges for really funding that ongoing infrastructure expansion and renewal. So the cost for infrastructure projects, when I talk about growing municipal infrastructure costs, there's a lot of factors that play into that. Obviously, overall inflation in the construction industry is a big impact. In particular, the rising costs of material costs. So we've noted that with a number of our projects, and it's reflected in our budget here. So you'll see that our budget not only is increasing based on the number of projects, but it's getting more and more expensive to be able to undertake some of the necessary infrastructure improvements that we have to do at the municipality. When you combine that with, obviously, there's a limited number of contractors in the Annapolis Valley, so there's always that competing for the demands for the contractors to complete the work, and a shortage of skilled labor all contributes to having higher expenses. So when you look at those kind of factors, and then obviously aging infrastructure, it requires that ongoing maintenance and replacement that puts a strain on budgets. On top of that, climate change is a huge thing for the municipality and every municipality in the province. As we're building infrastructure that's more resilient to kind of extreme weather events, costs go up associated with that as we bring about different adaptation and mitigation strategies. And then kind of from an adequate funding sources, and I'll talk about that a little bit more here, that remains to be a big challenge as we rely on a combination of property taxes and government grants and debt financing to really fund the capital projects. We're finding that they obviously fall short now with the rising cost of infrastructure. So the next slide kind of talks a little bit more about that. So from an adequate funding sources, when you look at limited municipal revenues, it's the first thing to kind of talk about, is that obviously the primary funding source for the municipality is property tax revenue. When you're looking at the funding of different events, and I'm kind of speaking mostly to the capital side of things here, there's a limited ability to increase tax rates to kind of deal with that growth associated with the cost for municipal infrastructure, because you're trying to balance the need of affordability for residences and businesses. So that's a key item that's on the mind of staff as we put together these recommendations. So then you get into, well, how do we manage the reserves associated with that? Because that's obviously an important area as we try to manage everything, is to kind of reduce the tax rate pressures on future ratepayers. So we've been trying to, we've obviously been meeting the minimum associated with the maintaining of reserves that's outlined in our municipal policy. But they fall short when you see that reserve balances are based on depreciated assets, and when you look at current day replacement costs. So what I mean by that, and I'll go into detail a little bit, and for those that have been on council for a little bit, you've heard me talk about this in the past few budgets, is that I'll break it down kind of based on the policy. Our reserve management side of things for capital reserves is that at a minimum we want to maintain 10% of our accumulated depreciation as a reserve balance. Our recommended balance is to maintain 100% of the depreciation, and then an optimal solution is to have replacement costs being the reserve balance. I mean, that would be the ideal, that you're fully funded on your reserves, that you're able to deal with the replacement costs that you would experience. So we, over the last couple of years, have contributed more to our capital reserves over the last couple of budgets to try and bridge that gap. We're close to 100% when it comes to our overall municipal assets outside of the municipal sewer side of things, but it still falls short of 100%, and the reason for that is that despite contributing 100% on an annual basis to of the reserve that's kind of accumulated in that current year, when you're using replacement cost values to draw from the reserve, you're going to see that drop down below 100. So obviously we want to get to the optimal level to be able to have it fully funded through reserves. We're not there yet. This budget year takes a little bit of a hit on those, and I'll talk about that in more detail. But it's an ongoing struggle. And I use an example of vehicles, a very simple example. The cost back, when the vehicle was 10 years ago or something, might have been $25,000 or $30,000. We would be contributing to the reserve based on that cost. Now to buy a vehicle, you're looking at more like $70,000 or $75,000. So when you're drawing down from the reserves at a higher level, it doesn't allow you to keep up with it. So we need to continue to work on that. We do have an additional contribution this year. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And we need to still hopefully look back in future years, and we'll end up doing some policy revisions to kind of identify limitations on utilization of reserves. We try to manage that within the budget this year, is to try and use the reserves based on the depreciated value, not so much the full replacement cost for all things, and we've taken on some debt to kind of fill in the balance here to kind of mitigate the impact on ratepayers. But the reality is that the municipality will need to consider the development of alternative revenue sources to really provide that additional funding to ensure the ongoing financial viability of infrastructure projects. So the combination of all this, when you look at provincial and federal grants, they play a key component of our capital budget projects from our level of governments, and we've done a good job over the last couple of years. We've had over, I believe over the last 2 years, I think I've got a chart or a graph on it, not including CCBF, over $10 million worth of capital-related grants. This year, over $6 million of our Canada Community Building Fund utilization. So they play a key component of all of our capital funding projects. So we continue to depend on those, but obviously it's difficult because they're not predictable. You're not guaranteed that money. The grant programs can dry up. So that unpredictability makes it pretty tough. But it's certainly something that we tap into quite a bit. And then debt constraints. So obviously borrowing for infrastructure projects increases the financial obligations over time. And it has to be something that's carefully managed in order to be successful. We have a number of debt-related thresholds that we always have an eye to, and I'll talk about those at the kind of summary of the presentation. That's something we always keep in mind to make sure that we stay on side of those. The budget that we're presenting for you does stay on side of everything, but it's something we have to manage. As we're dealing with not having sufficient reserves to address everything, we're starting to see the results of what we've been working for over the last couple of years to try and grow our reserves. We're seeing it a little bit sooner than what we even thought in terms of increasing costs overall associated with a lot of our projects. So in order to undertake them and move them forward, really taking on debt is the only option. So that's kind of a high-level overview of kind of things to think about as we go through each of the project sheets. And again, I'll summarize everything at the end.
Excuse me, Director Barr.
Yeah.
I just want to welcome Councillor Harding, and as you can hear, Director Barr is walking us through the budget, and then we'll maybe hold our questions to the end, and in case something gets answered along the way. But just wanted to welcome you to the meeting.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late.
No problem.
Right.
Sorry,
Thank you, Mr.
Director.
Mayor. No problem. So moving forward, I mean, obviously we have to be strategic and fiscally responsible in our capital budgeting. We have to make sure that we prioritize projects. So based on the urgency or the cost effectiveness of them or the long-term community benefits, to choose which projects we'd be undertaking. We have to continue to advocate for more provincial and federal funding. So there's been a lot of programs released recently that support capital investment in infrastructure, and we have to continue to push for those and advocate for more funding opportunities. We have to continue to invest in capital reserves. We have to seek out alternative revenue sources, and we have to try and come up with innovative financing and funding solutions. Really, by balancing all of that is the only way to be able to continue to invest in essential infrastructure while maintaining financial stability for our residents and for businesses. Okay, so after kind of giving that overview, the majority of the balance of this is I'm going to walk you through the 45 project sheets. I think it would be best if you have questions about the individual project sheets, certainly at any point, ask them, bring them up as we go through them. Might be best for each project sheet, but certainly if at any point you have questions about any of them at any time, just feel free to pop in and we can always jump back to a previous one. I'll try to answer most things. I mean, I think I can probably answer the majority of stuff, but if not, we've got some subject matter experts. A lot of the capital projects relate to EPW, so Director Kerrigan will be here to be able to answer some of the details if you have any further questions, but I think I'll be able to walk you through kind of the high-level overview of the various projects here during this presentation.
Okay, before we get into that, does any councillor have any questions on Director Barr up to this point? I do have one question, Director. Do we have one specific person designated that monitors provincial and federal grants so that we don't miss the boat on any opportunities? Is somebody keeping an eye on that all the time, or
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a funding analyst that we hired last year. So it used to be something that each individual director would monitor and manage kind of on the side of their desk and try to keep up with it. And there's a lot that goes into the applications and in the reporting side of things to kind of keep up with it. So we saw the need to have someone that they have a number of other duties as well, but part of their responsibility is to identify those programs that come in and align them with our capital budget to try and take advantage of them. Because there'll be opportunities that come up throughout this fiscal year that one of our existing capital projects might align with quite well to be able to, and really that really goes to reduce the amount of debt that we would take on.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so the first group of infrastructure projects relate to municipal infrastructure. So the first project on the project sheets is network upgrades. And this is an ongoing program, which is really to replace and add system and network components. It's really needed to make sure that we have continued functionality and reliability of our core IT network. So again, like a very ongoing thing, there's always components that would be added every year to deal with it. This coming year, looking to replace the wireless controller and 21 access points that we have here in our municipal building and otherwise. Is planned for fiscal 25-26. So the $79,000 that's been budgeted for that project would be financed from the IT capital reserve. Any questions about that one? All right, I'll move on to the next one. There we go. So hardware evergreening, so different from the network side of things, is that it's an ongoing program that's really there to replace and add computer hardware, computers, printers, things of that nature, any kind of peripheral that's needed from a IT perspective. It's really required, obviously, to ensure ongoing functionality and reliability of the IT equipment that we have here at the municipality. So in 25-26, there's a need for purchasing tablets, iPads that's going to work with our permitting software. Same type of thing for we're going to be looking at in terms of for our asset management programs as well. We've got budgeted for 30 computer systems to have to need replacement. There's a rotational number of years. I think it's 4 or 5 years that we would replace the computer system. So there's an ongoing need to do that. 20 cell phones, 25 monitors, and also looking to purchase a 360-degree camera that would be used for along the trails to record like a 360 view of everything within the trail so that we can maintain and monitor that better. So overall, all of those items add up to $101,375, financed again from the IT capital reserve. Any questions about that one?
I think we'll just let you keep going, Director, and if any counselor decides they have a question, they can flip their light on, and that's, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good. All right, thank you. The third project that's in the municipal infrastructure section relates to accounting and asset management software. So this is one that's been on the radar for the municipality for a number of years, the accounting software. We actually had an RFP ready to go to issue it, and then obviously with some of our cyber incidents a few years ago, we had to react quickly associated with that. And we entered into a 3-year agreement with our accounting software for a cloud-based solution that they had. So this is really bringing that back to the forefront and looking to acquire that software, to issue an RFP and acquire that software this year and get ready for the end of that term next year associated with it. So update, to take advantage of a lot of things that would work better with, obviously PVSC has a number of systems that we'd like to be better integrated with, have better reporting that we would have from our accounting software, which is deficient, and then get into things like automated property database updates or internet-based services for residents, that type of stuff. So certainly it's something that is still remains on our radar, and we've got it on this on this project sheet to look at that acquisition this coming year. Asset management software. So we have a system that's been in place for 5 years now, and through and no longer really suitable for our needs. There's a number of issues with utilizing that software on site from the operators that are at different locations and being able to record details of what they're encountering and maintain it. And we just kind of look back and see what's available now in terms of asset management, and it's come a long way from the program that we currently have. So we issued an RFP for that this past year, and we'll be looking in the 25-26 year to make a change and implement a new asset management solution. So those expenses are not cheap when you're looking at both the accounting side of things and the asset side of things. So we've got a budget in there for project management setup, migration and training fees of all the existing data, and then one-time costs associated with the deployment of the new accounting system, and then a one-time cost associated with the asset management software setup. So all of those add up to $634,600, and all to be financed from the IT capital reserve.
Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Director Barr. Yeah, this is a surprising amount, I think, when you think about what the cost is. Curious how long the last asset management accounting software, so you said it no longer suits our need. How long did we use it for?
I believe the current accounting system dates back from software that originated in the 90s.
Okay.
So it's very antiquated.
And the asset management one is?
So the one that we have now, we've had it in place for 5 years.
Okay.
So it's not as old, but as we've advanced our asset management activities, it's not meeting our needs. It's really deficient in terms of, especially from an app perspective, which wasn't as much of a priority 5 years ago, but has become more of a priority to make it more integrated in what the operators are doing on site and in the field. So we need something better, and then also from a management perspective of being able to track everything and record it properly. There's just a lot better software that's out there that can better suit our needs. So it is expensive. I mean, on an annual basis, there's licensing fees that are excessive as well, in addition to the one-time side of it. But it's something that we've determined as staff that's necessary for us to be able to keep up with our asset management activities.
Yeah, I think it's great to be up to date and current when we're investing in software, especially. Do you know what the lifespan, like the useful life of the new software will be? I know it's hard to predict the future because, things change so quickly, but, do we see needing to redo this again in 5 years or?
Well, I think the provider that we would be looking to engage with, I think you're looking at a lifespan of 5 years for the contract, the initial contract. Obviously, you would hope to be able to continue that in the future because you have such significant upfront investment associated with that. But the initial term would be 5 years.
Okay. Great, thank you.
All right. I certainly welcome either Chad West, the manager of IT, or Director Kerrigan to speak about it. They're more involved and up to speed on the asset management stuff. If they have anything that I'm missing that they want to talk about, feel free.
I have one question on that too. I almost hate to ask this, but where would we be ordering that from? Obviously, my question is it going to come from the U.S. and we're going to pay a 25% tariff on it? That's, I guess, what I'm getting at.
So that's an excellent question. With everything that's been happening with the tariff side of things, we've been analyzing how much we actually do purchase from the U.S. And there surprisingly is very minimal stuff that actually comes from the U.S. The biggest thing that does for us is software. Obviously, whether you're talking about Microsoft, the successful, not the successful, but the potentially successful component associated with this is a U.S.-based firm. So we need to, before we would ever come back to council for a recommendation on that, we're going to have to consider if there's any factors such as that with new tariffs and stuff. So before we bring that to you, we'll consider all the ramifications. But this is, the asset management one is one of them. So it's something that we've been talking about, and that we would have to consider when it comes to a recommendation around it. But
I guess the second question would be, is there potential for looking into alternatives where we could get it somewhere else than the US? I guess, like most Canadians right now, I'm a little upset about this, and if we can get it somewhere else without having to pay the tariff, or even if we had to, just, I hate like heck sending Trump any more than we have to. That's the bottom line.
yeah, absolutely. And I can let
Yeah, I can
James.
speak to both those questions. So on the tariff front, I'll start there. I did a review of the tariff list that Canada has put on to goods coming from the US. They were very selective in terms of the areas that they targeted. It doesn't include software, which I think is a recognition of companies like Microsoft and Google have such a dominant presence. So it would be very disruptive if they put tariffs on software, so they haven't done that. That could change. The purchasing of, from a U.S. company is a separate issue, and we will have a report come into Committee of the Whole later in the month on the successful proponent for the asset management software, so we'll have more details by then. It's probably better to speak to that one at that point, but it's certainly something that we're going to include as part of that report in terms of options, either with that specific contract and that vendor or alternatives. Yeah.
Perfect.
Regarding the asset management software, the previous solution, the one thing I would say through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Lutz, is that the software that we decided to go with 5 years ago, we learned a lot through that process, and we found that the operations staff never really adopted the software from day one, so it's not as much even that the needs have changed. It was more that through that process there was things that we got from it that were good. There was a big gap of functionality that it didn't have that the operations team really needed. So in this instance, this procurement was really to address that, so I view it as kind of a different scenario, and hopefully we're not in the same place in 5 years. However, Director Bauer was correct that the initial term of the contract is for 5 years.
Thank you. Director Kerrigan.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add one other item to Manager West's comment, and this will be in the recommendation when it comes to council, is the contract that we're intending or proposing to council to consider is actually with a Canadian company. It's just that this is a Canadian company that distributes software that is owned by a U.S. corporation.
Thank you, Director Kerrigan. Director Barr.
All right, the next project sheet relates to fiber wireless hybrid connectivity. So what this relates to, and it's an ongoing program with carryover, and it's really about connecting our municipal properties to the municipal network through our fiber and some of the some wireless solutions as we need. So there's $250,000 roughly of carryover, new budget of almost $100,000, and really it's looking to connect the municipal fiber network to facilities in Aldershot, and in future years to kind of finalize the Aldershot connection and move on to Canning as well. So in the budget is for this year Aylesford, and then the Greenwood Water Wellfield, and then also to make ready for Aldershot. So the total amount of the budget, including the carryover in the new budget, is $346,472, and that's financed with the remaining IT capital reserve from the initial project side of things, and then the balance is debt at $341,265. All right, and then the final kind of IT-related project as part of the municipal infrastructure is council chambers audiovisual upgrades. And what this really relates to are a couple things in terms of some new monitors. So we've obviously noticed that it's difficult, and Councillor McPherson's right now referring back to the monitors that are at the back of the room. So we're proposing to kind of expand the monitor setup here at the front to make it a little bit more conducive for council to have an unobstructed view of the of the presentations and to find it a little easier to see all the presentations. So we're looking to improve that, but then also to implement recommendations from an acoustic assessment report. We've had complaints for years about the acoustics in this room, so we've been constantly battling those. So going through an acoustics assessment report, and we set aside some general allowance of money to deal with making whatever improvements we can to improve the acoustics for especially those people that are in the audience that are listening to the presentations. So with that, there's $25,000 set aside for this project sheet, all of it financed from the IT capital reserve. The next project on the project sheets is the Waterville warehouse upgrades. So this is a carryover project, and it relates to upgrades to the Waterville warehouse to enable additional uses. So really what this involves is fencing around the property, some security systems, some fob-operated gate, installation of ice guards on the roof, so really fence, electronic gate, security cameras, and roof upgrades. So a total of all of those expenses add up to $235,000, and we'd be looking at financing them with debt in order to make better use of that warehouse. The next project sheet is a carryover project for municipal complex furniture and equipment. We started this project last year, and really what it is to purchase office equipment for new and existing staff. It doesn't include really small routine replacements. It's more as we've tried to gear up a few different areas to kind of handle some reconfigurations that we're doing. So for this year, we're looking at purchasing and installing new office furniture for the hub offices and the workstations, also the layout area within our building, a couple workstations there. So it's really configuring a number of spots here within the building to make them more efficient and to accommodate the changes from a staff perspective. So again, this is carryover project. The balance of it is $34,000, all financed from the building capital reserve. All right, the next one for municipal infrastructure is the pedestrian infrastructure program. So this is an ongoing program with carryover, and it really is about the construction of sidewalks from the sidewalk priority list. So on for the planned projects for the 25-26 year is that we're looking to construct sidewalk on Highway 1 from Colebrook Village Park Drive under the overpass over to through that intersection on the other side of the overpass. And construction of sidewalk along Colebrook Village Park Drive, really from Highway 1 down to the trailhead. Additional projects will be evaluated based on the priority list with additional funds. Now we did have in here the Horton School sidewalk project design. It's been deferred for now as we await a decision from Nova Scotia Public Works. So the two big projects here is Highway 1 Colebrook sidewalk and crosswalk, the Colebrook Village Park Drive sidewalk and crosswalk, and then general allowance for other changes that would be there. So the total associated with that, we've got carryover of $255,000, new budget of $1 million. So the total of that is financed through really 4 different areas. Going to be from the Transportation Capital Reserve for $780,000, CCBF funding of $400,000. We have a Connect 2 grant that the AT staff have secured of $25,000, and then $50,000 coming from our operating reserve.
Councillor Best.
Thank you. To spend that money out there by McDonald's, I was informed that the province is looking at a round boats out there.
Correct. So through you, Mayor, to Councillor Best. So this is more so looked at as a temporary solution. We've also got a project sheet that you'll see later on here that we're looking to come up with a final kind of solution associated with that based on what Public Works will end up doing at the province. So that project sheet, when you come up, you'll see that we're going to plan to do something from a study perspective that would work better with a roundabout, but there's no timeline associated with that. We haven't heard anything more from the province, I don't think, about that. So we're not holding our breath on when that might happen. But this project sheet is related to putting in more of a temporary type solution.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next project relates to municipal road remediation. So it's really an ongoing program that money is set aside every year associated with it for really to patch pave, mill pave, or microsurface the roadway. Really, when you look at it, there's about 25 kilometers of subdivision roads that are owned by the municipality. And if we can keep up on it on a year-to-year basis, it's a lot more cost-effective to kind of update, maintaining, and keep, from water infiltration and freezing and issues associated with it. It's a lot more cost-effective than full-scale replacement, so it allows us to defer that full-scale replacement and expand out the lifespan of the existing that's there. So traditionally, we've had $100,000 set aside associated with this. We're adding in another $100,000 because we're looking to add in stormwater system upgrades as well as part of this to try and route the water away as much as possible. So for this project sheet for the current year, $200,000 financed with transportation capital reserve.
Director Kerrigan.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to point out one thing that this would be used for. If anybody has driven anywhere near Silver Fox Drive lately, you'll understand where our priority has to be. You can almost lose a car in it, and I'm ashamed to say that it's municipal road. Unfortunately, all the asphalt plants are closed, and there's not much we can do right now, so we're trying to do a temporary fix to get us through the winter. And one of our priorities will be to fix that. There's lots of road that need work, but Silver Fox is, there's two or three sections that it's gone right now. So a lot of this money would be used for that location.
Thank you.
All right, the next project sheet, the last one of the municipal infrastructure side of things, is park facility upgrades. So this is an ongoing program to maintain and upgrade park facility infrastructure at several parks. Planned work for this year includes upgrades to the beach and staff buildings, signage, security cameras at Aylesford Lake Beach, renewed signage at all municipal park sites, and facility upgrades at Silvers Lake with the addition of an accessible lakefront viewing platform. So it's really to encourage active living consistent with our strong communities priority in our strategic plan. So again, it's security cameras, facility signage installation, a building at Aylesford Lake Beach with just a covered shelter for some of the staff, Silver Lake park upgrades, an outdoor structure, dock, wharf, shade structure. In Aylesford Lake Beach, looking to also do some beach rock removals and expand the equipment area and bring in some additional sand for the beach. So the total of all those activities for all the different upgrades is $235,000. It's financed from the Recreation Capital Reserve for $170,000 and the operating reserve of $65,000. All right, so the next group of project sheets relate to municipal sewer. These ones are more involved, and you'll see some bigger dollar value associated with some of these for sure. So the first project sheet relates to lift station replacements. So the municipality has 72 lift stations, part of the municipal sewer structure, and we do upgrade or replacement of 2 to 3 of those lift stations on an annual basis to kind of keep up with those and not have any of them get to the point of failure or of speed. So EPW plans to purchase, upgrade, and replace a number of those lift stations in this fiscal year. In particular, a new lift station at, and I'll use the term, it's AD2, so they have them all named for the different lift stations. And we're also looking at doing some additional work for generators, chambers, pumps, panel upgrades. So overall, we're looking at, really when you're looking at the 82, it's a relocation of that lift station. We did get some ICIP funding associated with that. They're also looking at getting generator sets for these lift stations GW10 and WE5, getting chamber upgrades for AT3, CB2, CK4. And then that was all part of the carryover budget that was there. The balance of the budget is that we're looking to do a new siphon main under the river associated with the relocation of 82, so there's more money put in there for that. And also doing a wet well wizard installation at CK5. Got some allowance for replacement pumps and 2 panel replacements within this current fiscal year. So all of those lift station replacements and the work associated with that totals out to a little over $2.7 million, funded from a variety of sources for this project. So about $587,000 from the sewer capital reserve, a little over $610,000 from the ICIP grant. We're setting aside $1.125 million from CCBF, and then the balance of it, $400,000 funded from debt. I offer Director Kerrigan if there's anything further on that. All right. All right, the next project related to the municipal sewer is sewage treatment plant infrastructure renewal. So this is an ongoing program with carryover as well, and really relates to the replacement of sewage treatment plant infrastructure and related equipment. So in 2025-26, it's really looking at a number of new screening facilities to try and mitigate what is entering into the system, having appropriate screening facilities at a number of the locations. So specifically looking at Aldershot, Avonport, Waterville, Aylesford, Canning, Hants Border. Also looking at putting in a sand filter refurbishment for Greenwood, a replacement airline in Hants Border, and then also looking at increasing security at a number of the plants with cameras, fencing, and electronic gates. So again, yes, the screening building side of things, the Aldershot, Avonport, Aylesford, we got funding from ICIP for that. Canning, also ICIP. Hants Border was also ICIP. So a number of those items were carried over. In the new items that we set up in the budget for this year, they're also looking at doing some UV bulb replacements. And like I said, some gates and fencing, and a solar array at the Canning location. I'll let Director Kerrigan speak a little bit more about that. But that renewable energy option at Canning is included in the budget as well. And yeah, that's kind of the most of them. Just some general money to kind of deal with some upgrades, but the majority of it has to do with the screening buildings, the solar array, and the UV bulb replacements. So the total associated with this project sheet to kind of do all the infrastructure improvements for the sewage treatment plants, a little over $9.6 million, and the majority of that is coming from grants and from the capital reserve. So $3.5 million coming from the sewer capital reserve, $1.3 million from the ICIP grant, a little over $2.1 million from CCBF, and the balance of $2.6 million from debt. We do have an outstanding application under the GRID program, which is the Growth and Renewal Infrastructure Development Program with the province, and that's for $302,655, which would reduce the amount of debt that will be utilized for this project.
Councillor Sappington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a question in regards to the screening. I was wondering, do we as a municipality have a way when we have industry or large building units where we have a requirement for them to preemptively have screening on their end so that the strain of all that doesn't fall upon the municipality.
Director Kerrigan.
Thank you, through your mayor to Councillor Sappington. The simple answer is no, we don't right now. It's something that we are trying to support our industries, but there's nothing that is making them screen their materials before they come to us.
Do you really think that if we were to have that as a requirement that we might lose business?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's, I don't know if I'd be the best to answer that. I'm sure the threat could always be there from some industry, depending on what the cost would be. For some industries, that they may say that adding that cost to add in that process, business by business, may be cost prohibitive and potentially could lead to businesses considering closure or other options, I guess. But no, I don't know if I'm the best to answer that.
Councillor Gates.
Mayor, am I correct in stating that these costs cannot come out of general revenue? They are coming out of water and sewer reserves. And I'm just wondering if the reserves that I look at look to be quite light.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. So a lot of the municipal sewer related things are all rate-based. So it would come from the municipal sewer reserve and from any external funding sources that we're able to identify, and really come from support from that rate base, whether it be the annual fee associated with each of for that service. So yeah, it wouldn't come from general revenue associated with that. And municipal sewer, when I get into the summary side of things, I'll be able to speak about the municipal sewer reserve, because it is by far and away the spot that has the lowest reserve balances. So it's not as well off as what the general reserves would be, because it's all funded from the. Now we've got a plan to try and deal with that. We're seeing a lot of expenses within this current year that's hitting into that reserve, but we're still going to try and stay the course of what we have to utilize that over a long term, say, I'm talking like 20 years, to get to the point of bringing that reserve back up to where it would need to be.
In other words, the rest of the bad news will be later on in the program. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to go back to Councillor Sappington's question for a second. So at this point, it's like a lot of things. You need data to make a decision. And so some of the engineering work that we're engaged with now is to do continuous monitoring. So we don't know, for example, I'm trying to speak like an engineer and I'm not, so I apologize. It's probably better for Director Kerrigan. But there's two primary components, as I understand, flow and strength. And we don't know, what industry is contributing to that before there's some continuous monitoring and data collected. So they may or may not be having some type of impact on sewer treatment. So we need the data sets to know what type of technology we need to use in sewer plants to deal with that. Or conversely, as you say, maybe some of it has to be borne by the industry itself. But at this time, we need to collect the data.
Okay. Director Cohen? All right. The next municipal sewer project relates to sewer collection line replacement. So this is obviously an ongoing program. It has some carryover this year, and it really relates to the renewal and replacement of sewer collection lines. So the big things that are in the carryover right now is the construction of a replacement sewer line on Chapel Road in Canning, 1,325 meters of a 12-inch sewer main, and then also construction of replacement sewer line at Mee Road easement, 365 meters of 12-inch sewer main. That's in North Kempville. So we also have within the new budget some top-up associated with both those projects, because what we saw from the tenders came in higher than what we had as a budget amount. So there's some top-up that's in there for 25-26, and looking to move forward with those projects in this upcoming fiscal year. We also have some allowance for new sewer laterals to be able to run the lines to the property lines, the sewer lateral line, so $160,000 related to that, and then just some general allowance for things that would come up in relation to sewer collection line replacement. So the total carryover was a little under 1.7 million. The new budget of a little over 2 million. So completely, all of that is 3.7 million. It's financed between 900 and almost 37,000 from the sewer capital reserve, 751,000 from ICIP grant, 1.2 million from CCBF, and $800,000 from debt. So you'll see as we go through these municipal sewer projects, CCBF is something that we end up using a lot of that federal money for things like sewer lines to try and address that. So you'll see that kind of consistently through here in terms of using that federal funding for that. All right, the next one is EPW equipment and OH&S. So this is an ongoing program that is here every year, and it's to replace end-of-life and new equipment and tools. So we've got a little over $158,000 in carryover, a new budget of $326,000. The kind of items that are located in here for like carryover are person down alarms, some survey equipment, fall restraint upgrades at lift stations, that type of stuff. In the new category, we're looking at replacement CCTV camera unit for inline pipe monitoring, aluminum welding equipment, blast cabinet and paint booth, safety equipment, including some lifting tools for some of the lift stations, lawn equipment upgrades, some snow clearing equipment replacements, things of that nature, adding up to $326,000. So in total, we've got $485,000 financed within the vehicle and equipment capital reserve. The next project sheet is the SCADA system, which is our supervisor control and data acquisition monitoring system. And what this relates to is new control panels, software, and other equipment related to that. So it's an ongoing program, does have some carryover, and really is to upgrade that SCADA monitoring system. And it'll really be equipment and software that will be purchased and installed in the 25-26 year. That's outlined in the SCADA master plan that's being prepared by consultants. So the carryover is development of that SCADA master plan, so we have money set aside with that, and then we've got an allowance for purchase and installation of the equipment from that master plan. So it aligns with what we were planning to do in the previous year for these upgrades. So it's a total of $550,000, all of it financed from the municipal sewer capital reserve. The next project sheet relates to the laboratory building. So it's a continuing project, looking at the construction or renovation to replace the existing laboratory building. I think you're up to speed in terms of that there's some structural deficiencies with the existing building, with some major issues with the foundation settling and making the basement exterior entrance unusable. So it's really it's more than 40 years old, and those structural issues need to be addressed. So we've got 1.94 total for this project sheet, financed with $40,000 from the municipal sewer operating reserve, $100,000 from the municipal sewer capital reserve, and 1.8 million from debt. So looking at the construction or purchase and renovation of that facility. And also there's $200,000 that's in there for new modern equipment that will go into the lab building. The next project sheet as part of the municipal sewer is the biosolids management. So this is a carryover project from last year. And it's really to develop a plan and process for managing the sewage treatment plant biosolids. So it's looking at the feasibility of achieving sufficient scale to service local and neighboring municipalities and private industry. Municipality has an array of wastewater treatment technologies that produce biosolids at differing intervals, and this plan will examine and project predictable volumes by technology type and quantify ongoing removal requirements. And then the plan will also address removals, temporary storage, and disposal requirements and opportunities. So really it's a management plan associated with that to really come up with how to manage the biosolids from a sewage treatment facility. So there's $250,000 that's set aside with this, fully financed from the municipal sewer operating reserve. And then the last project under municipal sewer is the sewage treatment plant lagoon desludging. Obviously that's an important element, desludging and monitoring that to improve the service and useful life of all the lagoons. And bathymetric surveys of lagoons and required desludging is a critical component of that. So in 25-26, it would really to establish a baseline for those biosolids management and desludging efforts. It would happen with all the facilities that require that desludging, I think with the exception of Avonport, which is a mechanical plant. Desludging would be started in early 25-26 for Aylesford and Canning, and the Waterville Septic Lagoon. So yeah, desludging operations and logistics, including the geotube pad construction for Canning, Aylesford, and Waterford, and then annual bathymetric surveys of the lagoons to stay on top of it and identify the ongoing plans for desludging of the sewage treatment plant lagoons. So total of $1.55 million, financed with $50,000 from the municipal sewer operating and $1.5 million from CCBF. All right, the next group of project sheets, there's 3 of them that relate to Greenwood Water Utility. All right, so water distribution system improvements. This is also an ongoing program with carryover from the previous year, and it really is, the project sheet is about making improvements to the utility distribution system. Overall, it's about upgrading and replacement of existing buried infrastructure as part of an ongoing asset management planning and to reduce water loss and reduce the risk for critical failures. So we've got the main project that's up here for this year is valve upgrades at Bridge Street and Main Street, and then also a general allowance for things that for us to be able to respond to issues that might arise throughout the year. But the main project component of this is valve upgrades at Bridge Street and Main Street. $265,000 financed with accumulated surplus. The Greenwood Water Utility doesn't have a reserve account. It just maintains its surplus, so that accumulated surplus is being used for this project. The second project of the Greenwood Water Utility is water system equipment. So again, an ongoing program meant to upgrade and replace water system equipment. Really it's for, in 25-26, plans include upgrade and addition of pH and chlorine sensors, water meters, and automatic analyzers for chlorine contact times as part of the upgrades of the water treatment plants. So the total associated with this project sheet is $210,000. Again, also financed through the accumulated surplus. There's also a Sandy Court PFAS filtration. I have no idea what that is, Councillor Kerrigan, but.
Director Kerrigan.
Thank you. I can actually tell you what the acronym PFAS stands for, but I know our manager of environmental services could. In summary, it is a compound found that was discovered in the the water near Sandy Court, and it was not an issue previously, but the government recently lowered some allowable limits, which flagged it for us as a potential issue. So we're going through the mitigation right now to figure out the best way to remove that PFAS.
Thank you.
All right, the last one for Greenwood Water Utility, and it's by far and away the biggest one, relates to the production well, and it's more so not the production well as much now, more about the transmission lines and the treatment. So there's 2 production wells that have been drilled, and they're complete, but they're not in service yet. So what this project sheet relates to is connecting to those production wells with a new transmission line and a treatment facility. So the new line treatment facility would connect to the 2 production wells, and it would allow for the addition of 75 plus customers along the transmission line, and it will induce extra capacity but also have some redundancy for the water utility. So the construction of the new transmission line is going to carry forward into 25-26, and the new treatment facility tentatively forecasted for late in 25-26. So rather than transporting raw water, by having a treatment facility, it would be able to service those homes along the way. So that's why the investment in the treatment facility as well. So the total of this carryover is $6.7 million, new budget of 3.8. So the total is $10.5 million funded through cumulative surplus, ICIP grant. So this ICIP grant has been transferred over from a municipal sewer line project that's not moving forward. So we're utilizing this grant under this project, and they've gotten approval from ICIP. And then the balance of $7.6 million would come from debt. So there is an application pending through the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund. We've sent that in, and we're waiting a response on that of almost $1.5 million. That would reduce the reliance on debt associated with this. All right, so the next group of accounts, and if there's ever a time where you need a break or something, just let me know, relate to regional sewer. I believe there's 5 projects. So I'll walk you through these 5, and then we'll get into our last group, which is the special projects. So regional sewer lines. This is an ongoing program with carryover, really the replacement of regional sewer mains. So what this really specifically relates to in this project is the replacement of a portion of the regional sewer force main between RG5, which is at the former municipal building in that location, and the regional sewage treatment plant. So there is some carryover associated with it, so it's like a contingency related to the force main installation that, due to seasonal issues, to make sure everything's fine with it. Also a 185 meter section adjacent to the regional sewage treatment plant. So the total amount associated with that is $400,000. It's financed with half of that from MCGP grant and $200,000 from debt. So this project is interesting because we had a regional sewer committee collectively through Numinus, Kentville, and the municipality applied for an MCGP grant of about $3.2 million. And this is one where the tender pricing actually came in lower. So we got approval to allocate some of that MCGP funding to other regional sewer projects. So you'll see that come up in the next ones, where we also have some MCGP funding that's being utilized elsewhere. I should explain, regional sewer is kind of an interesting arrangement where the municipality holds all the assets, we hold all the debt, and we maintain the reserve on behalf of the partners. We only contribute at the municipality about 22% of the total annual contribution, but we hold everything associated with that, with a lot of the funding that comes to service the debt or the ongoing expenses coming from the other partners as well. So. right, the next project relates to regional sewage treatment plant aeration and desludging. So this is a carryover project, and really relates to continued sludge management for regional sewer. So in 25-26, going to continue with the bathymetric mapping of all regional lagoons. I believe this is the one that I'm thinking about in terms of when cell 1 was temporarily taken out of service for maintenance. A lot of the flows were bypassed to Lagoon 2, so that obviously accelerated some of the sludge accumulation in that cell. So this is involving doing some surveying of that cell and desludging activities in that as well as part of our ongoing efforts associated with it. We're also looking to do some internal roadway improvements to really help remove some of the geotubes and whatnot that would hold some of that desludged material. So overall, the expenditures associated with this activities for the coming year are $1.6 million, financed with $675,000 from the MCGP grant and the balance of $925,000 from debt. All of these, I should mention too, with the regional, so the Regional Sewer Committee is made up of Tanna-Kempville, New Minas Municipality, and PepsiCo. They will be receiving a presentation on these capital projects and their regional sewer budget at their meeting next Thursday. So the partners will go back and get those approval and bring it back, so we'll keep council up to date on this in terms of their approval of these projects and if there's any changes that would come out of those meetings. But this is what we'll be presenting to them. The next regional project relates to regional equipment. So it's an ongoing program to replace end-of-life and new equipment and tools. So with this, there is the majority of the item in relation to this is fencing replacement and upgrades, creating a new secondary perimeter fence or replace it with a chain link fence. There's also some money that's set aside for security cameras, but the majority of it does relate to fencing around regional sewage treatment plant. So the total is $310,000 financed with $10,000 from the Regional Sewer Depreciation Reserve, and the balance is related to debt. The next project sheet for regional relates to regional consulting and studies. So it's a carryover project related to this one, study work related to inflow and infiltration in 25-26. So through to engage a consultant to conduct an inflow and infiltration study, as well as a hydraulic retention time study in the regional system in 25-26. Really the studies were planned for in the last couple years, but they were deferred due to the force main replacement project that we were involved in. So the money set aside for this totals $90,000, and it's fully financed from the regional capital reserve. The next one relates to regional lift station upgrades. So similar to I talked about how the municipality sewer system has 72 lift stations. There's a number of lift stations at regional. I want to say 8 or so. Yeah. Okay. And so regional lift stations RG5 and RG6 have been identified for pump upgrades, along with a pilot program to install wet well wizards in RG3, RG7, and RG6 to improve aeration to break up fats. So there is also a requirement for grit removal near RG2, which has been established to decrease the solids loading and improve operation of the related force main and lift stations. That's the lion's share of this project. There's also a generator for RG8, the wet well wizard that I mentioned for RG7, and then some monitoring equipment makes up a small component of this, and then some general allowance. But the vast majority of this, excuse me, relates to the grit removal for RG2. So the total is $1.325 million, financed from MCGP, $407,500, and the balance of $917,500 from debt.
Go. Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, this is not about so much the numbers and more just curiosity. Does RG stand for regional? So
Yes.
all of the lift stations' names are associated to which treatment plant that they are servicing.
Correct.
I did not know that, and that makes them make a little more sense now. And I always think R2D2 and like their little robots out there pumping sewage, and so that's very handy. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's why you see such a diverse naming method for the municipal sewer. We have like an AD2 and a GW, like whatever it is, but that's why. And then finally, regional sewage treatment plant upgrades. So this is an ongoing program, which is really studies related to the sewage treatment plant optimization, environmental impact. For this coming year, we're looking at rehabilitation of overflow chambers and replacement of UV bulbs. So just give me 1 second here. Yeah, that's the majority of what's contained in here is the overflow chambers rehabilitation, the replacement UV bulbs, which is something that we do every 3 years. Also doing an optimization preliminary design for the regional sewage treatment plant, including environmental assessment impact. And then there's also an immediate plant upgrades led by the optimization pre-design that's been budgeted for as well. So the overall amount associated with this is there's a carryover of about $500,000, a new budget of $400,000. So $900,000 financed from the regional sewer depreciation reserve for $400,000. The $250,000 from the MCGP grant, and then $250,000 related to debt. All right, now we'll get into the special projects. I believe there's 18 of these special projects.
Okay,
And this is the last
Councillor Gates.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the water tank for Greenwood and the new production well, does that also include a holding tank, like a new tank for the new wells?
I'll have to defer that question to Director Kerrigan.
Director Kerrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, the new production site does not include a storage tank. The design of it did not require that to get adequate chlorine retention time.
Thank you.
All right, so the first special project that we'll go over this morning is wind. So this is a carryover project, and it's really consulting services related to a provincial license for placement of a meteorological tower, really to put up a met tower to kind of measure, record, and report the wind speeds before you construct any actual turbines. You'd want to kind of measure that to make sure you're getting the volume that you would expect to get before investing in all the infrastructure. So this project has been on hold, pending a decision from Department of National Defense regarding the impact of the wind turbines on their radar systems. So that's what we've been battling with that. So we're just maintaining this as a carryover project. The full balance of the funding for the Met Tower and any of the licenses associated with it, $168,350 financed with the special project operating reserve because it's just been set aside for this project.
Councillor Lutz.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Through you, how many years has this been carried over for?
The original project sheet was in 2018.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sappington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So again, we're just waiting on the Department of Defense.
Correct, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sappington. Yeah, that's the holdup right now, is trying to identify whether we're able to have a response from them in terms of the radar mitigation. An alternative would be for an alternative siting associated with this. But within the area that's been designated for wind turbines, still would cause some concerns for the Greenwood base. So it is the radar mitigation issues that we're waiting on.
Follow-up, Mr. Mayor. As I understand, Berwick has wind turbines that they're being very successful with, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sappington, I'm not familiar with the Berwick wind turbines. Oh, area. Oh, in Ours House. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next project sheet relates to the light manufacturing park development study. So what this is a carryover project, which really is a study on the feasibility of a manufacturing park development. So it's really looking at supporting the supply chain for a local industry and enhance economic development to the benefit of both the municipality and strategic partners. So the business park studies and preliminary design of the municipal services will carry over into 25-26, and working with the Annapolis Valley First Nation to assess regional future needs. So the study itself is budgeted for $75,000 coming from the Special Project Operating Reserve. The actual development of the business or the manufacturing park is forecasted for fiscal 26-27, and that's on a separate project sheet that we'll discuss here in a little bit. J-Class Road Assessment. So this is an ongoing program which involves third-party condition assessment of the 135 kilometers of J-Class roads that are located within the municipality, but they're owned by the province. So every 2 years, we'll undertake that road condition and prioritization studies to update it. So really it's about identifying what level each of the various roads are and what would be the prioritization associated with resurfacing associated with that. So as part of the cost-sharing agreement that we have with the province, that we submit a list of roads for resurfacing to the province annually, and we use this evidence-based approach of evaluating the roads and what would be the priority items, determine what would be submitted to the province. So overall, the last time the assessment was completed was in 22-23. We were scheduled for one last year, but it is planned for Q4 24-25, but we think it will likely be carried over at this point now, the last few weeks of this current fiscal year. So that $30,000 is being financed from consultant and study fees, and then another assessment will take place 2 years from that.
Director Kerrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing to add. The reason why that, in case anybody's curious, the reason why the project didn't proceed this year as planned was the tender pricing came in significantly over budget. So staff and I are reevaluating our ask on that to see how we can do it, and perhaps do a hybrid model where we can do some of that evaluation in-house using our staff.
Thank you, Director Kerrigan.
All right, the next special project is in relation to water in the village of Kingston. So this is a carryover project as well. It's been in the works for several years to explore central water service in Kingston, which is either to supply it with its own water source or to examine the viability of expanding the Greenwood water utility. So we're still keeping this on as a project sheet. There's a lot of work that's continuing on with that in terms of evaluating options and how best to proceed with it. So there's $96,809 set aside in this carryover budget, with $45,000 of it designated from the Special Project Operating Reserve, and $50,000 committed from several years ago from the Village of Kingston in relation to this project as well. All right, the next project sheet relates to traffic and pedestrian study, Colebrook Village Park. So it's a carryover project, and it's really to look at how to make improvements such as new vehicle turning lanes, crosswalks, bus stops. As a temporary measure, as the municipality awaits the completion of Nova Scotia Public Works redesign and construction in the area. So this is to Councillor Beth's comment to align with changes that might be made along Highway 101, Route 1, where it connects. So the current plans are to implement a temporary solution for the sidewalk connectivity from the town of Kemptville boundary under the Highway 101 overpass, which is in the other project sheet that was discussed previously. This project is needed to create better pedestrian pathways in the area surrounding the existing business parks and potentially inform future NS Department of Public Works design. So it's really a project to kind of gather information and give them a study that can help shape what their plan would be to try and improve the configuration in that. But I believe the plan obviously is that is a long ways down the road, so that temporary solution from a sidewalk perspective is contained within the other project sheet. So the original project scope has been delayed, awaiting Nova Scotia Public Works examination of traffic patterns and assessed in this area. So this $50,000 is being carried over, financed from the Special Project Operating Reserve in a future year, planning to undertake the activity in 26-27. The next project sheet relates to the regional recreation facility study. So it obviously is a carryover project. Study work related to the municipal recreation facility. This represents the unspent funds associated with that, so we're just maintaining this project sheet and a balance of those funds depending on where the discussions and what may happen with the rec facility discussion. So $125,000 financed from the Special Project Operating Reserve that's been carried over in relation to it to have it there as part of any additional studies associated with the rec facility. Municipal accessibility upgrades is the next special project. So with this, it really relates to the construction of accessible infrastructure that really is in line with the accessibility action plan. So the main things in 25-26 that's been planned for is an Aylesford Lake Beach ramp and dock accessibility upgrades, as well as establishing a covered structure and accessible picnic tables. So ramp and dock improvements, also an accessible pool lift has been set up in here for this, and then some general allowance for any other accessibility upgrades that might be required at some of our facilities. Overall, $190,000 financed with a combination of consulting and special projects and the general operating reserve, $170,000 and $20,000 for each of those. The next special project relates to active transportation infrastructure. This is an ongoing program with carryover and really relates to the design and construction of active transportation infrastructure. So, go through a few of the items that are in here. Developing a safe routes to school strategy, pre-design of active transportation pathway for between Meadowview and the Valley Regional Hospital, pre-design of pedestrian bridges from Kingston to Greenwood, install shared signage per active transportation plan, Harvest Moon Trail and trailhead upgrades between Grand Prairie and Kingston, Harvest Moon Trail expansion easterly towards Wharf Road and Horton Landing, and then also an allowance set up for paved shoulders. Paved shoulders is identified within our active transportation strategy. A lot of it as opportunities arise, as the province undertakes paving projects. We've set up like a list of different roads and locations where we would want to expand the shoulders to allow for more active transportation. It's more of a piggyback off of the province as they identify different projects that they would have. We haven't had any money assigned to that from a real budget perspective over the past number of years. It was more so, I think the last time we did it, there was some funding that we had from the province that we were able to undertake some of the paved shoulders. So we're setting aside $400,000 within this budget, which wouldn't give you a lot, but it would allow us to be able to undertake any of those paved shoulders if the opportunity arises. And the plan would be to have that in there moving forward as well. So almost 1.3 million from this. Financing, you would have been familiar with the Active Transportation Fund announcement and whatnot last week. Almost a little over $579,000 from the Active Transportation Fund and a number of other active transportation grants. $536,000, 845 from the General Operating Reserve, and $175,000 from consulting and special projects. The next project sheet relates to the IMSA pilot, so the Intermunicipal Services Agreement pilot. So this is a carryover project. The municipality entered into a 2-year interim IMSA agreement with other local municipalities, which mostly relates to the management of King's Transit Authority and Valley Waste, and it's been extended to this summer. So really this is a carryover of the related costs associated with that project, as this project sheet is nearing the end of its life, if all things considered in terms of the interim arrangement. So the balance that's there is $76,872, and it's financed with a little over $33,000 from the Special Project Operating Reserve, almost $5,000 from the General Operating Reserve, and then the balance of it, almost $37, comes from other municipal units that will be contributing to it, as well as ICIP funding that is held by the town of Wolfville. The next project sheet is a municipal infrastructure development strategy. So this is a carryover project, and it relates to engineering specific to 9 projects that related to density housing in villages in the growth center. So it dates back to motions that were adopted by council back in 2022 that mostly relate to the provision of central services. So if you want to go to the back to the request for decision that was presented back then, there was a number of recommendations that were for general housing that had municipality looking to investigate all municipality-owned properties to determine if there's any surplus, to look at what affordable housing projects there would be, working with the Valley Wren for funding earmarked for a housing study, grants to Portal Youth Outreach Program, a number of recommendations related to higher density regional residential recommendations, and then also some central services recommendations. So some projects that stem from that, where some of the engineering work and is ongoing related to it. So the balance of the funding is sitting in special project reserve. We're carrying over this project sheet to continue to work on those 9 projects. So $477,152 that's going to be financed from the special project reserve. The next project sheet relates to the village asset management study. So this is a carryover project and really relates to driven out of the similar type lens in terms of the new housing developments within the municipality all require access to central services. Obviously the villages own and operate critical infrastructure for both water and wastewater. That's essential for that kind of growth. So you've heard me talk in the past about development of asset management plans with the 7 villages. That work is winding down. It's pretty much wrapped up with each of them. The remaining stuff would be to present the final reports to council and to the 7 villages, but then also this summer to look at doing some engagement sessions with the community to learn a little bit more about what they, so they can understand it. 'Cause there's obviously some fiscal challenges associated with needing to undertake, similar to like what the municipality has to do from a reserve perspective to make sure things remain fully funded, to mitigate the hit on the tax rates in future years. So we are on the tail end of this project. We are just carrying over the balance that's within this, not anticipating that we'll end up needing to utilize it all unless the scope changes a little bit based on the consultations with the community. But there's $235,003 remaining in this original budget, financed from CCBF.
Couple of questions, Director. How many more slides do you have in this group?
I've got a total of 18 more slides.
18 more slides. And how are you doing?
I'm okay.
You're the one on your feet.
No, I'm okay.
You're okay?
I've been under the
Okay.
weather a bit, but
If
I'm
you-
holding up.
But if you feel, you need a break, you let us know.
I'm doing okay.
We'll let you keep going then. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So climate change preparedness is the next project sheet. This is a carryover project, and really is about the feasibility studies related to wastewater to energy and renewable energy options. So obviously that type of stuff is pivotal for climate change mitigation strategies. And what is happening in relation to this from a carryover is a pilot project to purchase and install a water quality probe for remote lake monitoring in 25-26. There's also workshops and marketing materials, climate adaptation risk assessment studies, renewable energy feasibility studies, coastal erosion cooperative study partnership with West Hants, and then the water quality probe equipment that I mentioned. So total of for this project sheet is $255,000, financed $230,000 from the general operating reserve and $25,000 from the capital reserve. All right, the next project sheet relates to, and I mentioned this before, the light manufacturing park construction. So this is a continuing future project, construction of infrastructure to support development of that actual park. So we've got it set up right now as being $6 million, financed from $250,000 from the general operating reserve and $5.75 from debt in a future year. Obviously, we'll be seeking to identify alternative financing solutions associated with it to mitigate the amount of debt that would be coming on, but to at least get it on the project sheets and have it there for your consideration is a priority for the municipality as we move forward. It's being established as being a debt right now. And the study work associated with this is back on project sheet 183404. So project sheet to really facilitate the actual construction of that manufacturing park that we're doing study work for. The next project sheet relates to the municipal fleet. What this means is vehicles and equipment that would be used as part of the municipal fleet. It's more than just EPW, so that's why it's kind of been a special project component of it. This is an ongoing program, so every year there's replacements and additions to the municipal fleet. For this year, under the building and development services, there's a 2015 vehicle that we're looking to replace. We're also looking to add one new vehicle to the fleet. In EPW, they're looking to replace one half-ton with a plug-in hybrid. Also looking to replace the Vector truck, the combo truck. So that's a sizable purchase, about $600,000 net of trade-in value. So that's a big component of this. And that portion is what's financed through debt. 5-ton mini excavator, and then also a vehicle that will be used for trail inspections as we're involved more and more with that. So the total associated with those fleet additions and replacements, $1,060,000, financed between $460,000 in the vehicle and equipment capital reserve and $600,000 from debt. And all of those purchases are in line with the fleet optimization study that I believe was done back in 2020.
Councillor Sappington.
Forgive me, Mr. Mayor, but my light was on during the previous slide. Forgive my ignorance, but could you tell me a little more about what the light manufacturing park is?
I would defer that, I believe, probably to Deputy CAO Frost.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it's basically a business park.
So would it work as a place that businesses could lease spaces, or is it one factory would be able to move in, multiple factories? Is it? I would just like to know more about how it works.
Sure. So
Thank you.
There's a property that the municipality owns, and it's basically next to the new interchange that's being developed. Off the top of my head, I think it's about 40 acres that we have available. There's a few steps that we, as part of the study in the other sheet, that we're working through to see if it's feasible to make property available for sale. Some of what we're working through is what that would look like specifically. Like, would we try and sell by 1 acre lots or multiple acre lots or whatever it might be, so that businesses that need space would be able to purchase that.
Thank you so much.
I think I concluded the municipal fleet one, so I'll move on to the next project sheet. So the Highway 101 municipal signage. This is a carryover project, and it's really update of that entry signage, both coming from the Kings Hants border and the Kings Annapolis borders along Highway 101. So this would be to engage with a graphic designer, develop the design, work with the Department of Public Works to print and mount and install the signs. Added a little bit more into the budget this year associated with this, because I know that the entry signage for Kings Annapolis has had some damage to it. So I'm not sure if that's in relation to the concrete and the metal poles that might need to be adjusted, but we've just rounded this up to $50,000. I have been told by Dan Hagan that the RFP is supposed to be going out for this later this month. So finally going to get some movement on that. It's just been prioritized with other items, and has been on the back burner for a little bit, but I think it's finally going to get moved to the front burner. $50,000 finance with the Economic Development Operating Reserve, with funds specifically tied to branding initiatives. The next project sheet relates to the EV charging station and solar battery systems. So really it's the implementation of the EV charging infrastructure. The municipal office has 8 level 2 charging stations and 2 level 3 charging stations that have been recently installed. And then we're also going to have private charging stations that'll be distributed throughout various municipal facilities, such as the EPW building and some sewage treatment plants. We're also looking at some solar PV arrays and battery storage to hopefully integrate those into some of the locations. So looking at the ongoing work associated with this is the construction of a solar array for phase 2, and then also looking at a construction management and contingency allowance for additional rooftop solar on this building here, which is part of the new budget that's contained within this. So really it's about the solar component of it, which a lot of this funding, I think we got $405,000 in total from the Sustainable Community Challenges Fund, and a lot of that had to do with us building in solar and battery options as part of the EV charging stations as well. So total remaining associated with this is $725,000, of which $125,601 is remaining from that SECF grant, and then the balance coming from debt.
Okay, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through you. The EV charging stations, will those be accessible to the public or primarily staff?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. The ones that are located here would be accessible by the public.
Okay. And I'm not too familiar with charging stations. Are those something that the public pay for when they come here? They pay per use, or is that something that as they're here they can charge and it's paid for through the solar system, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, through you, Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor again. So they would pay per use. They're actually set up with little card transactions that you would push your card to it, and I don't know if it's by the minute or the hour or how it works in terms of the actual charge rate, but it is something that you would pay for, and we're establishing them at rates that are comparable to other type of charging stations. But yeah, it's a pay-per-use type setup.
Thank you.
Councillor Best.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know anything about electric vehicles, but where are they made?
Pardon? Could you
Where's
repeat?
electrical vehicles made?
The electric vehicles that are made. So the ones that we are looking to acquire as part of our fleet, I can't speak to where they would be coming from. The charging stations themselves, I'm not sure if they were procured. Well, I imagine they're mostly procured from Canadian manufacturers, but I'm not familiar with it, unfortunately.
I wouldn't mind an answer on that. Electric vehicle, are they made in Canada?
Yeah, I can certainly
Yeah.
check into that. Yeah, for sure. Two more project sheets left before I kind of get into a summary side of things. So this one relates to the fire service delivery in Greenwich and Wolfville. So this project sheet, looking to continue to do work and discussions on the development of a new fire station to best service this area. So discussions are continuing with that development of a new fire station. Obviously more information to be worked out and to finalize on that. So we're just maintaining this project sheet, which has $3.25 million in debt and almost $179,000 from the special project reserve in terms of the consulting work associated with that. So maintaining this project sheet into the next fiscal year. And then the last project sheet relates to PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy. So the reason why this is carrying over, we have passed a PACE bylaw last year that was passed. We're in the process now of implementing a PACE policy. The problem has been that a PACE program typically provides qualified property owners with low or interest-free loans associated with their retrofits and the work that they would do. However, a lot of PACE programs in other municipalities have relied on that and relied on third-party grant funding to really underwrite those interest costs. And we don't have those funding sources right now. They're difficult to obtain and or unavailable completely. So we're trying to investigate how we can work a PACE program with other funding that would allow us to offer those types of interest-free and low-interest loans. It's not something that you typically would want to have a PACE program that would be subsidized by the general tax rate. You want to be able to have some grant funding that would help provide that. Alternatively, you'd end up providing PACE loans at whatever the deposit rate would be for the municipality, so to make sure that it's not being funded by the general ratepayers. So in the last bullet on that sentence talks about how all other PACE-related costs will be designed to be self-funding with no impact on the tax rate. So the initial upfront costs is $15,750 from the special project reserve, $5,000 from the consulting special project reserve. So this is to implement the program. It's available to all ratepayers, so it's coming from special project reserve and the consulting special projects. But as we develop solutions for this about how best to implement it with a policy that has attractive terms to potential users of a PACE program, those costs will be funded either from other funding sources or or to be done at a rate that's neutral for the general tax base. But we're maintaining this project sheet as we look to finalize the PACE program and bring the policy into effect.
Great, thank you. And so we'll call a break then till we'll get back here at 11 o'clock.
Thank you. battling had the flu. My whole family's had the flu for the last, how long have I been here? 6 years. What's that?
Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. So whenever you're ready, Director Barr. You still with us, Tim?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Good. Sorry to wake you up.
That's okay. Thank you.
Excuse me. Okay, so the last few slides really are just to summarize all the different project sheets that we've given you, break it down in a few different ways to kind of show you what the financial impact is, the financing side of things. So overall, the total project costs of those 45 project sheets are a little over $48 million. And so the funding associated with it, direct from rates, $465,000, and we'll kind of summarize that here in a little bit. Grants over $13 million, capital reserve 9.1, operating reserve 4.5, debt 20.7, and other $88,000. So direct from rates, 465, 293. It's really coming from the general tax rate of 353, 293, and then the other two are coming from the sewer rate and water rates to make up that 465, 293. From the grant side of things, we've got CCBF, so we're utilizing 6.6 million of CCBF with a lot of these projects. We've also got almost 4.2 million coming from ICIP, so investing in Canadian Infrastructure Program. 1.5 million coming from MCGP, and then other, and that's mostly like active transportation related grants. The balance of the SCCF funding, that type of stuff, 729,000. So just to let you know too, to summarize the speculative applications that we got out there. So there was the grid application for a little over 300,000, and the CHIFs that was a little under 1.5 million. So on the capital reserve side of things, utilizing almost $9.2 million of the capital reserve. So I had a few things I was going to talk about here in this slide, but I kind of covered it in my overview when it relates to the utilization of that and the long-term plan associated with getting reserve balances to a level where it's more self-sustaining and you don't have a reliance on debt. So I won't repeat a lot of that. When you look at the utilization of the capital reserve, the vast majority of it is coming from the municipal sewer. So you've got general capital of 2.5 million. You've got municipal sewer utilization of 6.1 and regional sewer of $500,000. So you've got the municipal sewer is obviously challenged as it relates to reserves, and I'll talk about the reserve stuff here in a little bit. But still, $6.1 million from the municipal sewer is a sizable amount of utilization for their projects. We still have a long-term plan to hopefully get that using the rate adjustments that would have to happen with municipal sewer rates to still continue to fund everything associated with municipal sewer, use grant funding from other parties, grow that reserve. Regional sewer is an area of concern as well. Like you think about the millions of dollars that have happened with desludging projects and with the force main replacements. They don't have a very sizable reserve at all, and they're looking at that committee's going to have to make some good discussions and make some decisions about how they want to grow those contributions to get that reserve to a place where it can be a little bit more self-sustaining. So as we continue to kind of focus on those asset replacements and come up with strategic reserve utilization plans for it to kind of come up with a plan about how to grow it and how to also how best to utilize it. So in the capital reserve balances, so I talked about the general rate capital reserve, so I'll kind of summarize here again. 10% is the minimum that's embedded in policy. 100% is the recommended, and replacement cost is the optimal. So the capital rate, general rate capital reserve is growing from 14 million to 14.7%. So that's at 88%. So it's pretty close to the recommended. It's down slightly from last year. We were able to grow that. We made some additional, so every year we put aside 100% of the anticipated depreciation into the capital reserve account. And the last couple years we made additional contributions, $2 million last year. I think it was around $1 million the year before. And we were able to grow it. It used to be lower than 88%. We grew it to 92% last year. With this utilization that's in this capital budget, we're going to see that get utilized some, down to 88%. But we're doing good, I guess, when it comes to the general rate capital reserve. To try and grow that to 100%, ideally you want to get that to replacement costs so that you don't have to utilize any debt at all associated with your replenishing of the reserves. But when you look at, so we're going to continue to try and close that gap with capital reserves and stay the course with what we've done over the last number of years. The sewer rate capital reserve, with that utilization of $6.1 million, you're seeing it drop from 15.2 to 10.7. And you can see those sewer projects that we're looking to do, they're not out there. They're things that need to be done, and they're critical for maintaining the infrastructure. So that reserve was anticipated to be around 41% as of the end of 24-25. It's going to be dropping to 35%. The reason I should explain the reason why the capital reserve one, even though the reserve balance is going up, but it's going down from 92% to 88%, is because the depreciation amount is bigger than what the in that year than what the growth in the reserve is. So that's why, as a percentage of accumulated depreciation, it's going down. So sewer rate, the same thing. We still have a plan to continue that, and like I said, that's a long haul process to get that back up, or to try and get it up. Ideally, you want to have that up to be 100% of depreciation and also be at replacement costs as an optimal amount. That's the plan as we move on to this, but it's going to take many years to kind of get us there. And in the meantime, projects still need to be done. So outside of funding from CCBF, which we use a lot for municipal sewer, or other grant funding that we're able to get, and we tap into every grant program that comes out here. There's challenges, and you have to resort to debt, unfortunately, when it comes to that, or identify alternative sources of revenue. Operating reserves. So we're looking at $4.5 million utilization of operating reserves. So general operating is 2.4 million, utilizing 290,000 of municipal sewer. Water utility 1.8, and that's because it's all taken out of surplus. I mentioned to you before about how that's they don't have a reserve account, so it's really just coming from their surplus. So the long-term debt, and that's a very difficult slide to look at. This chart's in your package that would have went out in relation to it. So this shows the long-term debt associated with what is forecasted with this project sheet, or with these project sheets, totaling $20.7 million in long-term debt. So what it looks at is like, what's the estimated debt service associated with that? You're looking at almost $1.3 million in principal repayments, but on an annual basis, looking at a little over $500,000 in interest repayments. So that's your total debt servicing costs associated with servicing that debt to take advantage of that project now to move forward with them. So we end up, I mentioned to you before in the overview, that there's 4 different applicable debt thresholds that we look at, both from within our own policies related to comprehensive debt and in relation to the province's debt service ratios and the provincial financial condition indicators. And so we always want to make sure that we're on side with them. So when you look at debt service burden, which is the within our policy, it's FIN 05004, we have established that we have to be lower than 12% with that debt service burden. We're forecasting in 25-26 to be 2.1%. So we're on side with that. A lot of rural municipalities run about 4.5%, 5% is kind of the average, I think, across rurals. I haven't checked in the latest year or two, but that's where they had run before that. And you can see about how our debt service burden, based on how the project sheets are set up now, we're looking at a 5-year forecast of that growing to 8.5%. Still on side of the 12%, but still growing. And a lot of that, when you look at some of those big projects like the industrial park and things of that nature that are utilizing debt, it takes a big hit towards that. So on side, but we have to watch it very closely. Per capita debt, so that's pretty straightforward. It's just the total debt balance divided by the population of the municipality. There's a provision within our policy that says you want to have it be below $800 within the municipality. So our forecast in 25-26 is to be $617. So still on side with that, and on the 5-year forecast, $741, still on side. So, but still edging towards those thresholds that are established within policy. Debt to taxable assessment. So again, that's pretty straightforward too in terms of total debt compared to our total assessment base. It would take a sizable amount to get offside of this. Less than 5% is what's within our policy. And we're running at 0.5%, only looking to see that grow to 0.6%. So on side with that. Debt service ratio is with the FCI. It's the same calculation as what we had in the first one in our own policy. It's less than 10% debt service ratio to remain in the green threshold for the financial condition indicators for the province. I think less than 15%, you're in the yellow. Anything over 15%, you're in the red. So we're still well on side with that at 2.1%, and on the 5-year forecast, 8.5%. So we're on side with all of these, but it's something that we have to keep a close eye on as we move forward with some of these immediate projects. So this next slide is, I don't know if you can see it that way. Yeah, I guess you can. So this is in your package as well, which is really trying to show, like, as our infrastructure costs grow, and this shows about how the municipality's reliance on debt as a funding source has increased. So back in 21-22, you were looking at in the mid-30s of all funding sources for capital projects related to utilization of debt. That came down 2 or 3 years ago, but starting 2 years ago, we've seen that start to climb. And so when you look at and I'm talking about the blue line that's there, when you see about how it was up in the mid-30s, we'll say 4 years ago, and then we dropped it to in 2022, 23, 23, 24, less reliance on debt. It's really been the last couple of years where we've seen that increased reliance on debt to undertake our capital projects. So we've added in the trend line there to kind of show trending in the wrong way as it relates to debt. When you look at the other line, that's utilization of our capital reserve. So that is like how much capital reserve we actually have to utilize. And I mean, obviously we could fully deplete our capital reserve, but it's a balancing act to try and mitigate and try and smooth the rates over the long term of balancing between debt and capital reserve. You can see that our utilization of that has dropped quite a bit. We're actually forecasting to increase it a little bit this year and in the future years. But the trend line is not as dramatic as the debt one, but it's certainly trending downward. So it's important for us to mitigate these trends, and it's through reserve management, debt management, but quite frankly, looking at alternative sources of revenue. I talked about how affordability is something that we always have in the forefront of our thinking as we plan out these capital projects in our operating budget, that we want to make sure that tax rates remain affordable for residents. There's an FCI indicator that talks about affordability for residents. Municipality of County Kings is always in the 2.2, 2.3%. Threshold is 4% for the province. So by provincial metrics, we're well within the affordability, but generally speaking, you don't want to see a change on that. And we need to identify alternative sources of revenue to help mitigate that growth in debt, increase the utilization of reserves and compounding and creation of reserves. We are forecasted to add $515,000 to our capital reserve fund this year. Quite frankly, that's about all that we could put into the capital reserve fund, whereas last year it was closer to $2 million. And a lot of it has to do with the growth. I mean, we've got less capital projects this year than last year, but they've grown in $5 million in 25-26. So I'm just trying to summarize, and I'm not trying to have the skies falling kind of perspective, but I just want to alert you to the fact that we are becoming more reliant on debt, less reliant on capital reserves. We need to closely watch this, and we need to seek out alternative sources of revenue. So the last slide is just to kind of break it down one last time in terms of the $48 million. You can see that a little over $3 million relates to municipal infrastructure, little over $8.5 million relates to special projects, and then big one is municipal sewer, $20.8 million. Greenwood Water Utility, almost $11 million. Regional sewer, $4.6 million. So those rate-based type structures are the ones that are saddled with the biggest expenses and the biggest portion of debt. When you look at, I don't have it in a slide here, but when you look in our book that we prepared for you, you can see the majority of the debt. Actually, you can see it a little bit back on this slide. The tax rate supported portion of debt is pretty minimal compared to the sewer rate, user fee, water rate supported of those debt. So overall, that's the summary, is that that's how the capital projects are breaking down this year. Not surprisingly, a majority of them in the water utility and the two sewer systems.
Thank you. I'm going to have a comment or a question to you, Director. I'm going to use your words. You said, I don't want to give the impression the sky's falling, but you know what? It kind of opens the door for a little bit of scary situation if we happen to have a major disaster with that sewer plant down there and had to come up with a lot of money. Maybe the sky would be falling. And then, of course, I don't think it's sustainable with the long-term debt, that the way it's growing. I guess I'm going to throw that out as a question to you to answer in the end, but it's a situation that, and then, of course, I think some of us are hoping to see this regional sports complex built. So at the end of the day, we're not going to want to raise taxes and raise sewer rates. So it'd probably be safe to say that we may have to look at, as you said, also your words, alternative funding, even if they're not ideally what we'd want to do. Looking at being practical down the road, if we really pursue some of the things that we're talking about, and if we have a disaster, we got to be prepared for it. So I guess that's my roundabout way of saying that we're okay today, but long term, if we want to do something or if we have a problem, we've got to be a little bit better prepared, correct?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. When you look at these forecast numbers of our debt service burdens, we are okay right now. Like, we don't have a sizable amount of debt. But looking at the forecasting over the next 5 years, in order to make these projects a reality, we would be looking at having to finance it through debt. So it is very much a picture of where are we headed and how do we mitigate that. And any grants that we're able to obtain or any alternative sources of funding will be utilized to reduce that debt burden. And I should mention too, we do have a surplus allocation policy at the municipality. And what that is on an annual basis, if there is a surplus from the previous year, the first priority of utilizing that is to reduce debt. Right. So every year when we do that, if there's remaining money from the previous year, we use it to reduce debt, always first and foremost. But yeah, there's only so many wells to draw from.
Councillor Sappington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few questions, and I don't feel silly asking them because Premier Houston himself did a survey in regards to how to save money in the healthcare industry. And I was wondering if we do that with our own staff, because I don't presume to know about every department and how to save money, but I think that perhaps our municipal staff would be best equipped to be able to give us insight. So I was wondering if we ever asked our staff if they had any ideas on how to save money or make alternative sources of revenue.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sappington. So not that I'm aware of, have we had a survey like that of our staff? Probably the most useful information out of that would be through our operating budget for the most part, I would think. From a capital perspective, when you look at these projects, there's not a lot of discretion, I guess is what I'm trying to say, in terms of maintaining infrastructure that's in the ground now. So these are identified needs and costs from a capital perspective that aren't really a discretionary type thing. But your comment about engaging with our staff, because they're the ones on the ground and they understand it best, is a good one. I'm sure that there's a lot of informal discussions that may happen, but from a formal survey, I'm not aware of us ever conducting that.
I bet we have a lot of ideas that in our building and other people that perhaps they might go, oh, well, this could have been better done this way, or, you know, that sort of thing. And then I was wondering in regards to, would we be able to better provide for our municipal services in-house as opposed to contracting out? And do we avoid taking that strategy because of the initial investment? Is that why we continue to contract out our service or tender services instead of doing it in-house?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sappington, I'll end up deferring a lot of that to Director Kerrigan. But a lot of that has to do with the infrastructure that's required up front and the equipment that you would need to undertake that, and then the specialty nature of a lot of the construction work that would be undertaken is something that's usually, for the most part, better to be resourced through contractors. But I'll let Director Kerrigan kind of speak more about that strategy and that approach.
Sorry. Thank you. Would you mind repeating the question for me, please?
I don't presume to know how to do the type of work that you do, but I wonder if sometimes maybe
we would be able to actually save money if we were to invest in ourselves to provide the services ourselves as opposed to contracting the work out.
Thank you. I believe further to Director Barr, he hit it. You're looking at expertise, staff, and equipment that would be a significant investment to get into. Expertise that we just don't have or wouldn't have enough people that you're looking for work for all the time. So contracting those services typically is a better solution, so you're not into that. And then there's the hidden costs on the other side of that is the equipment maintenance, the fueling, just even things like, if I use an example of plowing streets, that it seems very, I'll say very simple for us to do our own street clearing with our staff. But our staff are already running treatment plants. They're already fixing pumps. They're already fixing blowers. They're already doing some general labor work. They're not available to go plow the streets. So we would have to invest in additional employees and then all the snow clearing gear that goes along with it. And then all the additional hidden charges of things like salt, fuel, maintenance of the vehicles, all that kind of stuff. Because when you're using them like that, they break down a lot.
Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Just a couple questions on forecasted growth. So, having been the chair of PAC since, November or December, it's been interesting because I've gotten a new perspective on the amount of units that are being proposed and that our developers are looking to grow in our communities. And so do we have a good handle on the amount of growth we're expected to have in terms of property tax revenue just from new development in the next 5 years? And will that be able, I recognize that a lot of that growth is associated, when I look at this graph, I feel a little depressed at how much is going in the ground, right? How much capital funding is going in the ground versus on things, and I know it's a necessity for growth, but versus the things that sort of enhance our community in a different way. Not saying sewers don't enhance our community, they absolutely do. It's just a little different. So do we have a way to forecast the growth that we're going to see in population and the growth in property tax collection in the next 5 years? And is that the other side of the coin, I guess, when we're investing in sewer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So we haven't undertaken the exercise of tying in that additional growth to exactly what that would equate to from a taxation perspective. It's certainly something that we'll continue to do, and we'll talk about it a little bit in our operating budget when that gets presented, in terms of we have like a 5-year kind of forecast chart that is contained within that talks about it, usually based on trending as opposed to saying, oh, well, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. We can get into doing more of that, I think, but we had kind of taken more of a trending approach. The bigger thing that you're going to see in the operating budget side of thing is the kind of hit that we're seeing from existing structures, especially on the commercial side, where the assessments are really going down significantly. That's impacting our tax base from the commercial side of things. So you'll see that in a couple of weeks when we end up doing the operating budget perspective. But from a modeling perspective, it's mostly been a trending type thing that we've done for that.
Thank you. Because I also think about here's actually another follow-up question to that. When there's development at the new interchange in Cambridge, because that will be tied into the reserve, will there be property tax revenue related to that development, or is that a different tax arrangement I'm not aware of?
No, that would be property tax revenue associated with that in terms of the structures that would, the different properties that would be owned there.
Okay, thank you. And then just one final question, if I could.
No, okay, hang on, I'm getting no from, so if we're owning the park itself, yeah, then there wouldn't be, but you might want to clarify that a little bit.
The associated growth around the potential light manufacturing industrial park. So that's sort of right into my follow-up, I guess, is around alternative revenues. Like that came up a few times during your presentation, alternative revenues. And I think as municipalities, it's hard to imagine how we can create opportunities for alternative revenue. And so I'm wondering, like, when you say that, do you mean things like the light manufacturing park and more tax base, or what type of alternative revenues do you see that we could pursue?
So through the mayor to you, Councillor, I mean, there's some easy ones that have been talked about. I mean, obviously, de-transfer tax is something that's been talked about before, but investments in renewable energy, in identifying other sources like that. There's a number of municipalities. Berwick came up in terms of area, in terms of what they do, which is Mahone Bay and Antigonish, I believe, and Berwick, working on that sort of thing. So there's other sources of revenue like that. In terms of coming up with what those would be, we'd have to obviously collectively work on that, but that's the kind of stuff that would be there in terms of identifying those types of alternative revenues.
I know when we initially looked at wind, there was a hope that that would be a really nice big source of taxation, the same way it's been in Cumberland County and I think in West Hanson, that there's been assessment on these big wind farms that have been able to generate tax revenue for the municipality, and then that hasn't materialized, and I think that's been hard to watch over the last few years. We're like, we've been looking at those alternative energies, but so will there be any related to the solar development if and when we are able to proceed with that?
Yeah, for sure. So the modeling that we've done in relation to the Meadowview Solar Garden does produce a positive return. It's a very long-term type investment. The capital repayment associated with that is 20 years with like a power purchase agreement for 25. So you end up getting your most lucrative returns on the tail end of that. But it does generate positive returns, and it does generate an opportunity. The lifespan of the panels is greater than that too. So we wouldn't enter into that without there being a positive return, especially with our partners that we have as well. So that's another example that renewable energy source is another source of revenue.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mayor.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Councillor Lutz. I'm well aware of some municipalities that have come up with some alternative funding sources and turned around and lowered their tax rate, and now they wish the heck they hadn't, because now they got a problem. And you know, so sometimes it's good, but depends on what you do with it. So, Councillor Gates.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering, has the municipality of Kings done a water rate study with regards to the URB?
In relation to Greenwood Water Utility?
Yeah.
It's through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gates. It's included in the 25-26 operating budget to conduct that study this coming fiscal year. We've gotten approval from UARB for all of these projects. Yep. To move forward with them. So that's done as part of an application project. I think it's $200,000. I forget what the threshold is in terms of UARB that you have to get their approval to it. So we've achieved that, and we've committed to undertake that rate study.
Thank you.
You'll hear about that in a couple of weeks when Katrina presents her operating budget. So.
Councillor Best, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I have never been scared like this before in my life, how much debt we have in the next 5 years. Just a comment, I think we're going to be in trouble on these debts. I'm scared to death what USA is going to do. 10% of the chicken growers in Nova Scotia are going to get cut next week. I'm very concerned about the dairy industry, and we're going to go in debt, keep climbing every year. I think we really need to look at this and see how we can get that debt down. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sappington.
So, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Greg, when we're talking about alternative sources of revenue, we are also talking about the importance of bringing new tax base to Kings County, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That's
We
part
have
of
to
it.
build opportunity in Kings County for outside investors to come to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sappington, that alternative source of revenue would be growing your tax base as well.
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Through you, can you just flip back one slide, please? Yeah, so when I look at this and when I hear the presentation today, what crosses my mind is, the sky's not falling, and in reality, we're doing quite well in most areas. There's one red herring up there if you take a look at it, and it's quite evident, municipal sewer. That's where our issue is, and that seems to be depleting a lot of our resources and causing the most concern about going forward. And I don't know if there are any easy answers around that because it's a very complex system, and we're always open to breakdowns that we don't anticipate. And we've heard a little bit about that, about the regional municipal sewer operation in New Minas over the last few months. It seems to me that if magically we could just delete that line, we'd be sitting here very, very happy and saying, wow, the municipality of Kings County is in excellent shape and we're doing very, very well, and our financial management has been very, very strong. Once again, I don't foresee any easy solutions, but it would appear to me that we really need to focus on the efficiencies in what we're doing with municipal sewer and our long-term planning, and looking at funding sources, grant sources, federal, provincial, whatever we can to support that. I anticipate and would hope that municipal sewer is our priority, and that we are seeking all detailed areas of finding out how to make it efficient, how to have long-term planning. We don't have to fix it all tomorrow, but we have to have it planned over the next number of years to make sure that it runs properly. And once again, that red herring is quite evident on the wall up there. If we can get that municipal sewer under control, I think we're in pretty good shape.
To you, Mr. Mayor, if I could just offer something with that, you're absolutely correct about that. And when you look at our reserve numbers, and I've shown you, we're approaching that 100% on everything else other than sewer. We're not far off from where the recommended balances would be. We're not doing bad. Municipal sewer is the one that's and in the other part of that, the majority of our funding for municipal sewer from CCBF goes to fund municipal sewer projects. Other grant projects go to fund municipal sewer. If we were able to use that CCBF funding for other municipal projects, we would have no trouble getting 100%. So you're absolutely right about municipal sewer. It's the biggest cost driver when it relates to the infrastructure, especially now that we're getting to the point that we're hitting significant capital refresh that's required for municipal sewer and regional sewer too. That those needs that are there and doing things that have not been done in terms of, you look at some of the stuff around desludging. I don't know when a large project such as that would have happened to help things in New Minas. But it's those types of capital expenditures in those areas that are driving the reserve down and driving the debt up. Absolutely.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, so we do have a recommendation, so do we have a mover for the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Lutz. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor or against, please vote.
Yay.
At least you're not scaring the pants off us today, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
Last night, those yays, you were lifting us right out of our seats. Motion carried. Okay, thank you, Director Barr.
Could I just summarize where things goes from here?
No, you're done.
I wish I was.
Of course.
So the operating budget will be presented in 2 weeks' time. I was going to send out an email. Today would have been the day that we'd be releasing the operating budget, but we're delayed a little bit, so that will likely be next week as well, but it'd be in plenty of time prior to the March 19th meeting.
Also at 9 a.m.?
Yes, at
Okay.
9 a.m. And then March 26th is when the first deliberations will happen of the budget. And the way that process works is that we identify a number of motions related to various elements that need to be approved, and there's plenty of opportunity for discussion and deliberation by council at that deliberation meeting.
Okay, well, thank you. And so, I guess, is there any other business that's coming to the Committee of the Whole? No? All right, it's an opportunity for the members of the public to come forward if they wish to make any comments. I would ask that if the public come forward, that they would state their name and address, and the time limit for the member of the public would be 2 minutes, a maximum of 2 minutes. Going once, going twice, gone. All right, would somebody like to move a motion? Moved by Councillor Sappington to adjourn, second by Deputy Mayor Peckford. All those in favor or against, please vote.
Yay.
Tim, you're gonna wish you were here. The lobster sandwiches Haley brought in today. Oh.
Yeah. I'll pass.
Well, that'll kill him, will it, Bobby? Motion carried. Don't we all?
Mm.
All right.